So yes, totally a man taking on a woman's trauma as if it's, like his own, which it's not. So don't fucking, do that. That's extremely cruel to her. Like, it's not your trauma, pal.
And also, you're not going to power walk your way out of that racism.
Yeah.
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is episode 64. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm joined as always by my fellow emotionally complicated game devs, Carolyn Pettit.
Beep, boop, 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 beep.
And Ebony Adams.
I prefer emotionally compromised, but let's roll.
Yeah, what's the difference? This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. Or, alternatively, we are the feminist killjoys coming for your media, depending on your perspective. Today, we're going to be talking about the new Netflix series Russian Doll. After that, we'll finish the show by each sharing a little something in What's Your FREQ-Out? Let's get to it. Hey, y'all.
All right.
How's your lives?
It's been a real crapshoot of a Black History Month. I can tell you that right now. I'm going to need everybody and anybody. Just gather yourselves up, gather your friends up, your family. It's been a real roller coaster of an 8 days so far. We're recording this on the 8th day of Black History Month. I fully expect that by the time this episode drops, I will have completely just given up and walked into the ocean.
It feels worse than usual, right? Like, I know it's always shitty, but
yeah, I feel like they save this shit up for February.
They do.
We're gonna drop all this shit, now. Not happy about it.
But I'm also like, okay, so there's all the bullshit. So we're referring to things like exposing politicians who wear blackface, the Gucci blackface sweater.
Michelle Rodriguez is
bullshit.
Caping for Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Oh, I hope that's in the entertainment news because boy,
that white woman posing with Cameroonian folks, this kind of poverty tourism. It's been a mess.
I missed that one.
I'm not sending it to you because it just will fuck with my spirit.
I've just been so exhausted, which happens every year, by like, this is the month in which Black people are allowed to speak, right? Or like, this is the month that we want to hire Black folks to write for our website. And like, just seeing so much of that is extremely frustrating.
Yeah, imagine how it feels for me,
right?
A Black person.
Because I keep sending you all of this shit, Ebony, and I'm like, this is
and I'm always
stupid.
like, yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
But I do love when outlets, blast out like, hey, looking for Black writers. Well, first of all, they'll say like people of color, writers of color to, do a piece for Black History Month. And I'm like, it's okay to specify Black writers in this instance, not just, general people of color. Like our experiences are not universal.
Wait,
but also,
sorry, wait,
hey,
they're not?
I know. But then also like, hey, maybe y'all should have prepped a little bit earlier for this. But I think Black History Month apparently is a surprise every year to people that it's coming. So, yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
Well, that does make for a good lead in to this week's entertainment news, of course.
Because it's all positive news.
Oh, I forgot about our, too bad, one good thing this week. I may not have anything good this week.
It's only been like a week. Since
I know. But boy, that one week.
It's so hard to find entertainment news that's not shit.
That 1 week took a lot out of me, I got to tell you. So on last week's bonus, those of you who don't know, Ebony and I talked about, Liam Neeson's stunning revelation that after a friend revealed she had been sexually assaulted, he said, well, what, who was it? She says, I don't know. What color were they? And,
oh my God.
And so then he literally said he walked the streets with a weapon, like a handheld weapon, looking for a quote unquote, his words, like black bastard to, have a go at him so that he could, fuck them up.
So let's just clarify this. It's so that Liam Neeson can feel better about the thing that didn't fucking happen to him.
To him, right. It's definitely an example of a man. I think it's probably to some degree it's like, oh, I failed as a patriarchal protector, so now I have to be the avenger, right? Kind of thing. But also, yes, totally a man taking on a woman's trauma as if it's, like his own, which it's not. So don't fucking, do that. That's extremely cruel to her. Like, it's not your trauma, pal.
And also, you're not going to power walk your way out of that racism.
Yeah.
So
since then, though, his Widow's co-star, Michelle Rodriguez, has responded to the brouhaha by saying, and I kid you not, that Liam Neeson is not racist because of the way he kissed Viola Davis, who played his wife in Widows. She said, quote, racists don't make out with the race that they hate, especially in the way that he does with his tongue, so deep down her throat. There are just so many things wrong.
Okay,
many things
hold
wrong
on.
with this.
Before we get into the actual wrongness of this, I would just like to add that those kisses and that makeout was so uncomfortable to watch. I'm just saying, for the record, I remember distinctly remembering that while watching that movie, being like, oh, this looks really gross and uncomfortable. Just saying.
Okay, so well, before we get into the wrongness, then I would also like to offer, why did people not just, quietly cut the mic whenever Michelle Rodriguez is about to say something? Quit asking her questions. Quit putting her on stage. Stop letting her speak in public.
Okay, now we can discuss why that statement was the dumbest thing in the world.
The fact that generations of slave owners happily assaulted and raped the enslaved population surrounding them and considered them essentially animals, and yet happily, raped them and copulated with them. So just whatever. Who you fuck doesn't determine, your level of racism. This is basic.
Also, that's not how racism always works, right? The thing is that Liam Neeson can be very friendly and enjoy company with Viola Davis, his co-star, and think that she's a good black person and that she's okay, unlike these other ones who are bad. Right?
Black men,
these are all
specifically.
Yeah. But strangers or hooligans or whatever the fuck, as opposed to the person that you're friends with because they're the good ones they're the model minority, blah, blah, blah. Right? It's just such an asinine bullshit.
Yeah, it's a basic level misunderstanding of what racism is, right? The notion that to be racist is to be someone who carries overt, explicit hate in your heart, for a category of people and also individual members, of that community. And so to be racist means to be the person who actually flicks on the fire hose, and, sets dogs on people and whatever. It completely allies all of those smaller, microaggressions, macroaggressions that don't seem to come from a place of hate or of fear. And it's no, we really need to unpack this. And as a Latina, come on, really? You're going to cape in this way?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this really, in my opinion, goes into the larger national conversation that we're having about racism right now, how we as a country or as a people understand racism and how we talk about it. Cory Booker, who's now running for president, recently said, I don't know what's in Trump's heart, right? When questioned about whether, Trump is racist or not, versus, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who when asked by Anderson Cooper, is Trump racist? She just says, yes, no question. And it's because his policies are racist. The impact they have is racist. It literally does not matter what's in his heart, right? There's just this tension between all these white people who really want to believe that racism is just this active, malicious, thought patterns toward, all black, all people of color all the time or something like that, when that's not what racism does not work that way. So it's so refreshing to have people like Ocasio-Cortez who just say what needs to be said without any waffling, or beating around the bush. And, we're just at such a crucial moment in our national discussion about this that we really need to cut out all the bullshit and be very clear about this.
Yep, absolutely. And can we shout out friend of the podcast, Jay Smooth? Fairly, basic but trenchant, how to tell someone they've said something racist. And, his statement, listen, I don't know what's in your heart. I don't know what's in your mind, but I do know what you've done and the effect that it has. And that's the thing that I'm pointing out to you. I can't know what your interiority is, and that's irrelevant, to the effect. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I promise this is pop culture related. Give me a moment. So, also this past like week or so, man, Virginia. Woo! Virginia's having a rough week. What the hell is going on in Virginia? So basically all these like Virginia lawmakers and politicians, these photos have surfaced from them, from the late 70s, early 80s, of them wearing blackface. And there's this kind of maybe idea that some people float of like, oh, well, that must have been a different time and it must have just been like more acceptable back then. So interestingly, sort of in response to that, or because of that conversation, a clip has kind of resurfaced and made the rounds on Twitter and stuff, from a 1984 episode of the NBC show Gimme a Break, which starred Nell Carter. And it was what we would call a very special episode, right? Because that's an episode that dealt with like social issues in some larger, very serious way. And it was literally about blackface, right? And about, it condemned blackface in no uncertain terms. So it's not like, it's not like nobody knew back then that blackface was extremely effed up.
The excuse that something was of an earlier time and so is therefore excusable is reprehensible. But also, these folks, when they play act with, blackface and minstrelsy and whatever, the notion that, oh, I didn't realize this was racist, or I don't have racism in my heart. Again, who cares? The lie underneath that is that, when you fetishize, certain like racial markers as is required by blackface, it's not as if these people are doing blackface and then, play acting like Mae Jemison or something, or Martin Luther King. It's always some like generic pimp or thug or mammy figure or whatever. And just the notion that like at the time, like, oh, we didn't know this was wrong. Yes, you did. And the frisson of the forbidden, is what drew you to it. It was, there was something that you recognized was out of bounds about this. And that's why it was fun for you.
Interestingly, though, so one of the photos I saw from like, I think a Virginia med school yearbook is of a man in blackface dressed as a woman, and the caption or the accompanying text is something like, who knew Diana Ross would get into med school or something. And interestingly, like the same day that I saw that, I was walking through, it was either in the Burbank airport or the Oakland airport. I see an ad, there for like Diana Ross coming, to perform, this location, these dates. And, and I'm like, hell yeah, man. Like all these years, like Diana Ross is still kicking, like she's still doing it. And, like just F you guys, like God.
F all of them from top to bottom. And apparently it's everybody. So my family, huge parts of my family are from and still live in Virginia. And I'm telling you, like it's shit there is the state pastime. Got to be interrogated. Y'all have been up to some nefarious stuff behind the scenes. Not even behind the scenes. It's in the yearbook. That means that stuff was happening. Like the camera didn't just happen to catch one-off anomalous incidents. Like this stuff was happening all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So where's our good news, Carol?
Okay.
Make something up. Make something up.
Oh, here's the thing. So a new battle royale game called Apex Legends just dropped. It's by Respawn, who famously made the Titanfall games. And so there's 8 heroes to choose from right now. 8 characters that you can play as. And of those, 1 is a gay man and 1 is non-binary. So 25%, and of course, like no small number of straight male gamers are losing their shit about it. So that's fun.
Wait, I'm sorry. You're saying 2 out of 8 are of some marginalized representation?
Yes. Well, okay, I mean, of queer. No, I mean queer.
Oh.
There's a black woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
that's
not
great.
Like it's
So that's way better than how Overwatch launched.
Yes, definitely better than Overwatch launched. Yes.
Take that, Blizzard. All right. Good recovery.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Did you know that we can keep bringing Feminist Frequency Radio to the airwaves because of you? It's true. If you are enjoying our show, please consider joining our podcast community at d.rip/femfreak. It's where you'll get access to some fun perks and bonus episodes, and really, at the end of the day, you're going to help us keep bringing feminist media criticism to the airwaves. So please head on over to d.rip/femfreak. Let's move on to our main for today. Russian Doll is a Netflix series starring Natasha Lyonne as Nadia, a New York game designer who, on her 36th birthday, finds herself trapped in a Groundhog Day-like loop as she repeatedly dies, only to find herself transported back to her own birthday party. The series follows her quest to figure out what anomaly has imprisoned her in this loop and determine how she might escape. Co-created by Amy Poehler and with a writer's room full of women, Russian Doll has quickly become one of the most talked about shows this season.
I loved this show. Oh,
me
my
too.
God. I thought this show
Who was your favorite character? Can you even... Caro. Caro?
Well, I mean...
My sweet birthday baby. My sweet birthday baby.
Oh, God.
Your favorite.
I loved her shirt, though, with the chain thing and then the poofy shoulder. Oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like, Nadia herself, I mean, just, God, it is so wonderful to me. So let me I'll say this about Nadia. Like, Nadia is the kind of person who, in real life, I would find it very hard to be around because she, at least for, much of the show, she's very closed off. She's very defensive. She's like, she's always like on, she's always performing, and she's not being like very genuine, but we come to understand like why she is so protective of herself and why she kind of rebuffs. She doesn't really engage with people in a sincere way. She's very funny. She's very witty. She's like, and Natasha Lyonne is just amazing to watch. And I'm thinking like, God, like, I can't think of a female character, I've seen, ever really necessarily who's complicated in these particular ways, who's funny, who's like outgoing, but also like defensive. And it's just like a really layered character portrayal, in my opinion. So yeah, like, I was just fascinated, first of all, by Nadia, and loved Natasha Lyonne's performance. Like, I haven't really seen a lot of her work.
Whoa.
I know, I never seen,
but I'm a cheerleader?
Yeah, I never saw it. I know. But man, I am like,
so
after seeing this, I am like, wow, I am a Natasha Lyonne fan now. Like, she was awesome.
Yeah, Natasha Lyonne has always kind of existed on the periphery of my pop cultural awareness, such that when she popped up in things, I enjoyed her, but I didn't really seek out her work. And so when folks started talking about Russian Doll, I was like, yeah, I might check it out. I might not. I got into a period where I was physically incapable of getting off the couch, physically and emotionally incapable of getting off the couch. And it was the perfect time to binge this show. I mentioned to the two of you when I was like, hey, when we were talking about stuff to talk about on the podcast, this would be great. But, I mentioned that I had a hard time with the first episode because it felt so affected, and her performance felt so affected. And so, but I'm so glad I stuck with it, because that's the point, right? That the performative nature, it's authentic, for, whatever definition of authentic, you subscribe to, but there's a reason why it feels as if you are distanced from the character, because you are, that is what they're trying to do. And it took me, the first half hour to get through that, but I am so glad that I did, because the complexity and the depth to the way that Natasha Lyonne constructs this character of Nadia, both, Natasha as an actor constructing Nadia, but then of Nadia constructing herself and being always aware. Like, there's never a moment in which she is not sort of looking at herself, and not in a, like narcissistic fashion, but her self-awareness is turned up to 11 because she is always navigating like these potential emotional minefields, right? And the way that her experience is saying, like, we're gonna take this and we're gonna use it, and you're gonna be forced to continue looking at yourself and dig deeper. And so, like, literally, when everything resets, she comes to looking in a mirror, looking at herself over and over and over again.
When I was in college, I studied theater, and, a certain number of my theater, co-students, whatever, were, I would say that they had a tendency to be like always on, they were like, and I found that like kind of exhausting to be around. Like it just didn't work for me because, I like sincerity. And maybe obviously like for them that may have felt real. It may have been their real, but to me it felt performative. And so I just love the way, that Nadia is very much like she's always guarding herself against potential connection, right? I mean, John, her ex, tries to like engage with her in some real ways, and she kind of like rebuffs him and just like treats him as a joke. And, at one point she says, "Oh, being married is for suckers, it's for mediocres. I think I'm meant to be alone." And whatever you think about marriage, like I'm not pro, I'm not a big marriage person, but it's for her, it's like a larger thing about just connection in general. Like she said, "I think I'm meant to be alone." I love the way that this ends up peeling back the layers and, being really, so obviously I'm a sucker for stuff that's thematically about like, oh, the things that really matter are, connection and caring for each other. I think Maniac, which we talked about on another episode, was thematically pretty similar to this in a lot of ways. Like ultimately it was saying like, oh, what really matters is like connecting and looking at and caring for each other, looking out for each other. So I'm a sucker for that to begin with, but I really thought that the complexity of Nadia as a character really made this work, very successfully in its kind of exploration of those ideas.
Yeah, for all Nadia's insistence that she repudiates connection, the connections that she does have are so deep and so important to her, to her therapist, who is absolutely wonderful.
God, so good.
To her friends. I mean, when she's living out this, like reiteration over and over again of this birthday party, and she starts to notice that that folks are disappearing, right? She doesn't want her friends, Max and I can't remember the other woman's name, but she doesn't want them out of her sight. She's like, I refuse to let you go. So this is a woman who is saying like, I refuse to get married, and, I refuse to let anyone kind of have an emotional, hold on me. And yet nevertheless, she has them, and they're so important to her, but she's not someone who gives that away willingly. But her loyalties and her connections, when they are there, they are so deep. And that in fact is part of what she's wrestling with through this show, or, through these episodes, right? The connection to her mother, that for her own survival, she has to allow herself to release from that.
I really liked the way that they portrayed her mom in this. It came in later. She was played by
Chloe Sevigny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways that you can show like mental instability. And I thought that it was really interesting how they did it. In terms of like, she's going and buying a watermelon. All right. Now she's going and buying watermelons from every fucking bodega in New York. You're like, well, that's really weird. And then her being really like aggressive and mean to the attendant, and making her daughter go back in there and complain to the manager about something that didn't happen. Like they slowly built it up to show how like this sort of weird, quirky thing turns into like really aggressive abuse in a way that like over time becomes really draining. And watching the relationship after you've seen her, I think her name was Ruth, the woman who ultimately raised and sort of is a therapist, but ultimately raised Nadia. You see her when she's younger interacting with Nadia and her mother, and being like, oh my God, like, how do we navigate this? And being like, okay, well, you have to eat some soup. You can't just have watermelon. And so you see the ramifications of what that really weird shopping spree actually means, and like the emotional and physical costs of that. And I like that was sort of built up over time in the show a little bit, right?
I agree. And I think it's very important that the show, it says that Nadia has to like forgive herself for not, right. It was like extremely unhealthy. Like she could not have stayed with her mom. And so like, as important as connection is, and as, in our lives, like there are times where we just have to, even with family, sometimes potentially we have to say like, we have to cut people off and be like, for my own safety, like I have to let you go. I have to let this go.
But even then in the show, it is clarified that she didn't make that choice.
Sure.
Right? Like that she was like, she's been sitting with this guilt as an adult being like, I left my mother. And Ruth was like, you didn't. And also that's okay. Like
right.
both of those things.
Right.
And I found, I always find Natasha Lyonne's characters, there's a similarity between the ones that I've seen. Like there is a boldness in her performances. There's a way that she exists, and so now I'm talking back about Nadia, where she's unapologetically huge. She takes up a lot of space.
Yes.
She is very she's perceived to be very confident in her bigness, and in the way that she behaves and the choices that she makes. Like she talks about how she's done every drug under the sun. Like she will party, she will do all of these things.
She's also more overtly sexual
Yeah.
than a lot of female characters are allowed to be in terms of like just saying what she wants or like doing what she wants with men.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they do such a lovely job, both in terms of like the dialogue and the story progression, but also this is a testament to Natasha Lyonne's acting skills to show the depth of how fissured and the cracks underneath the surface of that, right? That bigness of her, while could totally be completely how she is, really is kind of masking and hiding this deep-seated pain and trauma underneath the surface. And so like I'm curious about, what does it mean when she connects with this other person and they go through something together that nobody else can understand? What does it mean when she tries to heal from her trauma? What is her character, and I don't mean like the character, I mean like her character as a human, look like outside of that space or outside of that healed space?
Yeah.
In terms of the sexuality stuff, I actually was really pissed off that the show was like, condoms don't matter. And like they said it multiple times. And I know that it was part of like to show the wildness of her, but I didn't like that. That really made me upset.
Well, I think that was from what I've read, a lot of folks are taking that to be evidence of Nadia's kind of death wish. Right. So it's not the show saying, oh, this doesn't matter. Or it's kind of funny when someone's wild enough and, passionate enough to say condoms don't matter. But it's just further evidence that Nadia is being careless with something. And I think this is, something that Ruth points out as well, that Nadia has this deep seated death wish that she doesn't even acknowledge. And that's part of that. But yeah, let's talk about Alan.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. We'll go to Alan. One more thing real quick, just because I was talking about her doing a lot of drugs. Favorite character was the drug dealer, because holy shit, I will buy all the drugs from him.
Let the record show that is someone that I have pointed out to you before.
I know. I was like,
and I refrained from doing an I told you so while you were watching this. But yeah, I was like,
as I was watching this, I was like, I bet you that Ebony has sent me a photo of this dude and been like, you should date him.
Absolutely.
I was like, cool.
But actually, before we then move on to Alan, although this ties in, I loved this version of a New York that actually is multiracial. Because we get so many versions of New York that are essentially like Friends, right? And so not only are we not getting any lead characters of color, but absolutely nobody in the fucking background, is a person of color. So, the fact that at this party, not only Max, but like there are people at this party and they don't look or feel like wallpaper. They aren't accessories to prove that like Nadia is cool. Like this is just the New York that she inhabits that feels so real and makes so much sense. These were not characters who were incidental. And so I loved that Alan, the actor Charlie Burnett, is a man of color like that. that gives such an added dimension to this his character and to the show, because the easy version of Alan would have been played by a white man and it would have read completely differently to me. I still would have had empathy and sympathy for his character, but not in the same way that I did for Alan, particularly because of the incredible challenges in getting like helpful, sustained, compassionate mental health care if you are a Black man specifically.
Yes, and nobody in New York has apartments like that.
Girl. Okay, like what was Alan's girlfriend's name? She's a fucking English PhD student, and she had the most bomb apartment, Max's apartment. I was like, where are these folks getting this money?
I don't know, man. The other thing that I think is interesting. So, Alan, we'll get to you. You're just not as interesting as everyone else. It's fine.
What?
It's
hard disagree.
I know. I don't actually mean that. I just thought it would be funny to say. Okay. Also, I really loved the costume design, and the more I think about it, one, because the fashion was fucking amazing, especially at the party. Like, just, I wanted everything there. But the costuming was very specifically part of the character design and storytelling, because, like, Alan's girlfriend was wearing the dumbest shit. Like, it didn't look great on her. It was very bland. It was supposed to, it told us who she was and how we should perceive her. And same with like what Alan was wearing, right? There was this whole like, these people are a lot more, I mean, I'm going to say basic, even though I don't necessarily want to use all the connotations that come with that.
Yeah, basic.
Whereas everyone else is a little more wild and a little more interesting. And like,
and Nadia calls it out. She's like,
these worlds are colliding.
What is this Urban Outfitters aesthetic? Like, did you buy all of your art at Urban Outfitters?
That was so good.
Very Banana Republic, safe. And, Alan talks about like how he is so deliberate about the way he does things and presents himself because he hopes to find a measure of safety in that. And so dressing in the way that the people at Max's party would be completely overwhelming for him. Right. It would be too much. You couldn't manage that.
It shows just how like when he goes to the party, he sticks out, right? Like when and it's part of the, I think like, I'm pointing this out because I think that it's all of the aspects that go into making a movie or TV show or whatever it might be, whether it's the lighting or the costume design or like just the set design, all go into character and relationship development as well. And so like the fact that they were able to break through that barrier and I think that the costume design did that for me in a lot of ways of like, it made it feel bigger and harder for them to cross it. And when they did, it's like, holy shit. Like this is a deeper level of connection.
Yeah. Yeah. The entire look of the show, from the way that the camera moves through rooms in Max's apartment in the old yeshiva to the bathroom that she put together with like that vaginal geode door, which I immediately wanted in my spot. It was so perfectly a representation of the way we moved through the piece. And speaking of Max's apartment, I can't believe everything this show was able to do in 8 episodes. Because if we wanted to talk just alone about the way that Nadia's Jewish heritage, comes up in the show and the way this show wrestles with like the cultural and spiritual inheritance of her Judaism, Nadia as a non-practicing Jew, but still very much, what people call culturally Jewish. The fact that Max is in her apartment's in this old yeshiva that's been, converted, been gentrified into these hipster apartments. The shul that they go to that Nadia goes to find out information about this yeshiva. The woman who prays for her and this, like, even if you're not a religious person, the way that this woman sort of takes her in hand to offer her kindness and compassion was so moving for me and so specific. It wasn't a generalized kind of, hand wavy, feel good. It was like, no, this is a specifically Jewish thing. So if you know any Jewish writers specifically who are talking about this, hit me up on Twitter, hit me with them links.
I also want to talk a bit about, I like sort of finding connections or echoes between, one piece of media that I love and another piece of media that I love. And so I was fascinated by how in Russian Doll, Nadia is the creator of this game that is basically like seems
rock
essentially
and roll games.
Yeah, rock and roll
Sorry.
games, right?
That made
Obviously,
me laugh.
not the rock star, but she has created a game, and when she plays this heroine named Ariadne, I think, which is also the title of the last episode, and it's essentially like impossible, or there's like a very difficult, or puzzle or obstacle at a certain point that neither Nadia herself nor Alan, has ever. Nadia may have been able to pass it at some point, but now she doesn't know how. She's like, wow, this is way harder than I remember. And in the final season of *Halt and Catch Fire*, the character of Cameron, who is also like a game dev who is kind of has a difficult time making real connections with people. She's kind of, closed off in some ways, like creates this game that nobody can figure out like how to progress in it until like her, ex-partner, business partner / good friend who she's had a falling out with, like is like the one person who kind of understands Cameron well enough to determine how to actually like complete the game. But I just thought that was an interesting kind of mirror there between those two characters.
I loved when Nadia goes to that meeting with the other devs, and it's just like comes in late and is like, I gotta call. This is my drug dealer. I gotta take this.
That was so good.
But just like, the visual difference of her in that. Oh my God, that red shirt, that blood red shirt,
so good.
And then the camera like flips back to the dude to, their version of like the Urban Outfitters hipster, tech dude aesthetic. Like she couldn't be more alive and pulsing in that moment. And then just to like fucking chuck the deuce on those idiots. So satisfying.
There were a couple of references that I thought were really subtle and nice. They kept mentioning Dolores Huerta, who is an activist around labor rights, like very well known, did incredible work around those issues. And she just kept coming up again and again because of the way that the time loop happened, which I thought was like very much a you need to know who this woman is moment. There was also a passing joke about Andrew Dice Clay.
Oh, God, that was so funny.
It was so good.
Because after she said it, I looked at her and I was like, oh, she's totally right.
Which is, I would say the reference was something like, like I really like him, but I'm sure that's not going to last long. Like, I'm sure he'll become problematic one day. And you're just like, oh, God, you just like in that one sentence just succinctly encapsulated all of our fears of literally every dude in Hollywood.
Well, and also it was so funny because it was Andrew Dice Clay, right? So the notion that like he's going to be problematic one day was just hilarious.
Totally. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought that those were really smart moments in the show. But okay, you want to talk about Alan? We're running out of time. We keep not talking about him.
We don't have enough time to talk about everything that goes on. But Alan's character, when he first appears, like you have no idea how to feel about him. And I was so worried that there was going to be this gross, like nice guy take on his character. Right? That it was like, his girlfriend is, just like this horrible woman and he just wants to love her and whatever. And you get that, but you also get this very intelligent and thoughtful view from her, where she says like, this has been very hard for me. Like I have had to manage this and manage you. And I couldn't do it anymore. Like she wasn't made out to be a villain and we weren't rooting for him to sort of win over her, no matter how satisfying, that scene was. And that one iteration where Nadia tells her off, like that's very satisfying, but that's not the point. That's not the end to get back at your girlfriend. But I just thought like the way that Charlie Barnett was able to quietly suggest all of the turmoil he was experiencing and the like Herculean efforts he was going to fend off his internal demons and the things that he was fighting, the darkness that was trying to take him over. I was blown away by it. And so at the end of, I think it's like episode 6, where we find out how his first death happened, I was a wreck. Like, I was just a wreck because, we've had this kind of, these funny scenes when Nadia's like, there's death after death after death, and she's falling down the stairs and all these different funny ways and whatever. And so at that point, we're kind of primed for more funny deaths, even though we don't know when they're going to happen. But to have that just wrenching realization that Alan took his own life, and that he has in fact gone up to do it again. That's why they're now in this current reset. It was just devastating.
I'm going to end this segment with a tweet from Andy Zeisler. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Y'all ready for this?
Okay. Russian doll, but I'm trapped in the time loop between when I finished watching the series and 5 minutes later found out that Natasha Lyonne and Fred Armisen are a couple.
Yo.
I lost my shit when I read that.
Yeah.
Not that it matters, but also she's so awesome. And I don't know her personally, but I really want to believe in her, and I don't understand her life choices.
Aw, I like Fred Armisen.
Isn't he kind of a dick?
Is he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard some shitty things about him.
Oh, I don't know.
That's why I was like,
I just mean that I don't know. I just mean that I like him, his persona, as a performer and stuff. That's all I mean. I don't know anything about him personally.
Well, that's my freak out and the end of the
Thanks, folks.
See ya. We're done. All right, let's move on to what's your freak out? Ebony, you want to get us started with your quote unquote stuff today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So there is a new documentary called Horror Noire on Shudder. And it's produced, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the names, but it's got these like industry luminaries, writers and screenwriters and directors, producers, etc., who are knowledgeable both about horror as a genre, but also about film as a medium, and specifically about how Black people have been involved in the production of horror text or the subjects of horror text since film began. It looks super interesting. I can't wait to check it out. And it's on Shudder, which is like one of those channels you can get through Amazon Prime, but I think you can also just watch online. So we'll put up the link because, as you know, super obsessed with horror as a genre. And the fact that this is specifically about Blackness in horror, fascinating.
So yeah, I just looked it up, and among the people who the film features conversations with are Jordan Peele, Tony Todd, Black horror character actor, Candyman, etc.
Tanner Due. I think Franklin Leonard might be in it. Yeah. There's just some amazing thinkers, writers, whatever, people attached to this. And it's a tight 90 minutes, but people who have seen it are like, I could have watched, 8 hours of this. So encouraging people to check it out. I'm definitely going to be checking it out.
Amazing. Carolyn, what are you freaking out about?
Well, I'm literally freaking out about the new remake of Resident Evil 2 because it's creepy and scary as hell. But what I want to freak out about, and I know I've done things like this before, but I'm very easily scared, and I don't really necessarily like. At times I enjoy being scared, and at times I really don't. But so what I've been doing with Resident Evil 2 is playing it, on stream on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/FemFreak. And there's really something about like the communal experience when I do that, when I feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Like I'm I have all these people here with me, watching me, like sharing. And, I feel like horror is, I don't know, for me, it's like meant to be a communal experience, right? It's meant to be like, somehow there's a comfort in like sharing the fear or facing the fears like with other people. It's very different, to experience horror alone than with others. And so like when I'm playing and I have folks, watching the stream, like I'm more able to, if I get, if a jump scare really gets me, I'm able to like laugh about it after the fact because, because I can laugh at myself and because there's something cathartic about it when I'm sharing it with others that there wouldn't be if I were just like playing the game on my own. So yeah, I'm enjoying the new Resident Evil 2 remake. But definitely like particularly enjoying the experience of playing it with folks in our Twitch stream community who hang out and watch and laugh along with me or get scared along with me, and all that good stuff.
Nice. Remember, Kara, when you would stream from the office and I would threaten to print something from the printer remotely, in the middle of a game to freak you out? And it would be those times when like you were the only one in the office and it would get dark early. Yep. Aren't you glad you don't stream from the office anymore?
Whatever. Ebony's too much of a Luddite to figure out how to actually do that.
People, why do I let Anita... This is just one more disappointment in Black History Month. I'm through. I'm through.
Fair. That's fair. I deserve that. That's fair. Oh God, I was going to make a terrible joke. I'm going to avoid that by sharing my FreQ-Out this week. So I was on planes for a long time recently and watched some movies, and I watched a couple really good ones. So, Caro, did you watch Beautiful Boy?
Oh no, I didn't. I missed it somehow. I really wanted to see it, of course, because I love Timothée Chalamet, but I just somehow missed its release window, I guess, or I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so I watched that. It's nominated for all kinds of awards, and it is about... So it stars Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet, and it is about a father-son relationship that's very, very close, but the son is a drug addict. And it's that, and ensuing events happen. It is so beautiful. I will literally watch anything with Timothée Chalamet in it. Like,
even Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, like between Call Me by Your Name and this, I think that he is so phenomenal.
Oh, I
in
agree.
This way that like is mind blowing to me. I think he is one of the like rising stars of like deep, intense, emotional drama, so to speak, I guess, in film. And he killed this role. He was so good. And like Steve Carell was great. And we don't see him do a lot of serious stuff, I don't think, or maybe I haven't, but their relationship and the way they worked off of each other was just heart-wrenching. Like I'm on an airplane fucking bawling my eyes out because it is such a gut-wrenching movie. So yeah, like, I think one of the, I couldn't help but be a little bit disappointed at how like tertiary women were in the story. Like they just really weren't important or didn't play any real role. And part of that is because it really is just about these two characters and the dance that they're doing to like attract and deter each other. So anyways, I highly, highly recommend it. It's marvelous and very difficult to watch. The other movie I watched that's in that same sort of like really intense, it's sort of like drama that I think kind of got forgotten or got ignored. I don't know. I don't remember when it came out, but I feel like, anyways, it's called The Wife. And it's with Glenn Close. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't see that one either. So
The Wife is about a very respected writer who had just been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature.
The Nobel Prize in Literature. Not the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature.
Whatever. The thing that's famous.
Yeah.
They're both famous. You're right. It is the Nobel Prize. I didn't know there was a difference. Cool. The Nobel Peace Prize is the one that fucking Obama won for all the wars that he continued. Cool. Anyway, so he wins this prize, and the movie is going through them learning about it as a couple, them going to Stockholm to receive it, all of the hoopla that comes with it. And what I think is so powerful about it is you learn relatively quickly that their relationship is kind of complicated, that the husband says, oh yeah, my wife doesn't write, even though they met because she was his student and she was a very promising student. And then as the story progresses, you learn that she actually wrote all of his shit, that she was a much better writer than him, and he got all of the attention for it. And you can see Glenn Close, like, look, I know that we all know her from 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, she is incredible because of the subtlety with which her facial expressions, without even saying anything, show over time in this film how she's getting worn down and kind of can't take it anymore. That, like, all of her life's work has been ascribed to this man because she was told early on that women can never make it and that your stuff won't get read. And then there's just this moment, this is huge spoiler, but where she's like, she's kind of like, how dare you not recognize that, like, the characters I've written into your stories are about me and you. Right? Like, just this, oh God, it was really good. I thought it was really good. And just, like, heart-wrenching and awful, and, like, just the way, like, you can totally picture and imagine this actually happening, and it has, right? Like, this is not a story that came out of nowhere. I mean, I don't think it's based on anything, but there's so much history around men taking credit for women's work, or women realizing that their work won't be prized unless there's a man's name on it. And so I don't know why did this movie win awards or nominated or anything?
Well, I think Glenn Close is nominated for an Oscar, I think.
Yeah, and this came out in August of last year, so it should be in this award season, but I don't know if whatever. It's really good. Anyways, that's it. Those are my freakouts. But okay. Take a breath. Move on to the next thing.
Phil, please keep that in.
We actually have a listener freak out this week, so we want to share with you what Rob Jurgen Dukes is freaking out about.
Hi, this is Rob, and I'm freaking out about the YouTuber H-Bomber guy. A couple weeks ago, he played through Donkey Kong 64 on a Twitch stream to raise money for Mermaids, an organization that supports trans youth in Britain. He talked to tons of guests about trans rights, including Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and by the end of the 57-hour stream, they'd raised $340,000. Now, obviously, I don't need to tell you how toxic gaming culture can be, so it's really encouraging to me when this hobby we love is used to lift up marginalized people instead of tear them down. Okay, thanks for listening.
Oh, man. Yeah, that H-Bomber guy stream was just so phenomenal. It just became this massive, massive event, you know? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called in, was on it at one point. Among many other, amazing people. You know, there's like this great moment where Grant Kirkhope, who is the official voice of Donkey Kong, for Nintendo, said trans rights as Donkey Kong. And they just what I love most of all, perhaps, about that story is that so Graham Linehan, who is this British celebrity who I think created Father Ted in the IT crowd, among other famous British shows. He's kind of been on this he's part of the big anti-trans movement in the UK now, essentially. And by kind of demonizing the stream and the youth charity Mermaids, the youth trans charity they were raising money for, he actually helped them garner so much more attention, and hashtag thanks Graham became this huge thing. And anyway, mad props to H-Bomber guy and everyone involved for just making that stream such a huge success.
Awesome. Also special this week is we have another listener freak out from Meg. Meg did not give us an audio clip, but she did share a link to Apple's AirPods. So we are just going to assume that she's freaking out about AirPods for some reason, along with the following text. Why would anyone submit anything? Literally nothing submitted has ever made the show ever, and you keep asking people to send stuff in. Thanks, Meg.
Thanks for
we really value your very uneducated opinion.
Well, what I do, listen, folks, we can't play them if you don't send them in. So send us your freakouts. Don't let us freak out alone.
And you can do that at feministfrequency.com/freakout. That's FREQOUT. All right, y'all, that is our show. You can catch us back here every single Wednesday. Stay tuned for the bonus episode, which is only available as a backer of this podcast, which you can be. So head over to d.rip/femfreak and give us your fucking money.
You know who's going to have something to say about that?
The internet?
Meg.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Meg will. That's fine. We love to hear from you. If you don't know, Ebony and I are back with our Star Trek Discovery recap podcast, and we actually have a structure and script, and we're organized. So don't pay attention to the first episode of that, but listen to all the others.
All 3 of them.
And you can learn more about that at feministfrequency.com. If you're enjoying this show, please rate and review us on iTunes. And when you are stuck in your personal hell of a time loop where you're trying to work out your deepest, darkest traumas, just tell your friends that you are really into this podcast called Feminist Frequency Radio and to stop doing such hard emotional labor.
You can listen to this episode again and again and again.
Check out all of our work and our other podcasts at feministfrequency.com, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at FemFreak to stay up to date on all the news. You can find me at Anita Sarkeesian.
I'm at Carolyn Michelle.
I am at English people keep their houses too damn cold.
Our producer is Phil Circus, who also composed our theme music. Technical support by Sarah Norales. Production assistance by Taylor Simmons, and art by Jamie Barron. We will see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.